Good afternoon to all the students of Khan-e-Noor. This is week 2 of International Business. My name is Imtiaz Sharifi and my email address is imtiazsharifi@hotmail.com and my number is mentioned below. We will kick start from our previous session of globalization and today's week is on multinational enterprises. So we will kick start off our session with the table of content for today's week are multinational enterprise, the nature of characteristics of multinational enterprise. We will call it short to make life easy for us. We'll keep it MNE, and why firms become MNE. What's the definition of MNE? Basically, it's a multinational corporation or a worldwide enterprise is a corporate organization that owns or controls production of goods in at least one other country than its home country. Basically, you must have a business abroad. It could be any other country. Most US companies and UK companies have got plants or factories or companies in other country also. It's called a multinational enterprise. We'll call it, for the sake of argument, MNE. Usually a multinational company, the revenue of its generation is 25% from the abroad countries. So typically you're only considered a multinational company if the amount of investment that you have done 100%, 25% or more comes from another country which you have invested in. Multinational enterprise is also known as transnational enterprise, TNE, transnational corporation, which is TNC, or even a stateless corporation. To be honest, stateless corporation is simple. To be honest, it means you have got in different countries companies, hence it's called MNE. Let's look at the top 15 brands. This will be my first question to all the students listening to this PowerPoint slide. If you look at Apple's value in 2018, it's approximately $2 trillion. What happened for it to come down to $1 billion or so, $1 trillion or so? How come it lost half of its value share? And the answer is not Corona, for most of you just replying that Corona might have taken effect. The top 15 brands, and most of you know all these companies. Apple has been going on quite strong the last couple of years. Google, from what it was to where it came. Amazon, Microsoft, Coca-Cola, Samsung, Toyota, Mercedes-Benz, Facebook. These are all MNE brands, and I'm sure all of you know it. In the future, I will share a link which will show all the companies that have gone in the last 20 years to where they were at and where they are now. Let's look at the top 10 best performing companies. I mean, the 2019 it came to $961 billion. While look at 2018, it was far more revenue generation that. So the question relates back: what happened in 2018/19 for Apple shares to go down drastically? What happened? This is the first question. Secondly, as in Microsoft, Amazon's, these are it's just to give you, my question is not to do with the wealth, but to give you an idea of the top 10 or top 15 MNEs. Berkshire Hathaway, that's Warren Buffett's baby or his company. JP Morgan Chase, what a bank that is. It's a very prestigious and elite bank. Johnson & Johnson, I'm sure all of you know about the products that it delivers. Let's look at a list. Let's compare the last 10 years of 2008 versus 2018. The figures have dramatically changed in 2020, but this I could get from books, this beautiful graph. If you look at 2008, if you look at PetroChina, and you look at 2018, you will see that the company has completely gone out of the top 10 rankings. The company was at number 1 in 2008, so you can assume that all these companies, Exxon, General Electric Motors, the Gazproms, the Royal Dutch Shell, Singapore OPEC, that's Singapore Fuel Company, mostly they are fuel companies. So 2008 was much more of an airline company, much more a fuel selling company, mostly into General Electric, and a bit of a AT&T, American Telecommunication, were in there also. Fast forward 10 years ago, I mean, it gives you in the right hand section how much their company was worth: 728 billion. PetroChina, Exxon, $492 billion. If you come back to 2018, the value that most of these companies have completely gone out of the top 10 chart. I would like to ask a second question: what happened to these companies that in 2008 were the leading market or dominant player in their own field? To what made them go below the top 10 rankings? Fine example is Apple. I mean, there's a beautiful model how they have distinguished their products year by year of launching new innovative phones, watches, programs, TV. They're coming up with a new Apple TV, Apple Content TV. They're coming up with Apple Movies, so they deserve to be at number one. Google is another fine example. Microsoft, Facebook have gone up the ladder the last couple of years more. Berkshire Hathaway is in there. So I mean, we will discuss this question more, to what happened to these companies in 2008 that they're not doing well in 2018. What went wrong against them? So it's a simple, straightforward question. I have the answer, but I would like to keep the brainstorming ideas guessing. I would like to keep your broaden your horizons, so you can come up with ideas what these companies did that you in the future with your company will not fail. I mean, you could be a CEO, you could be a manager, you could be, what did these companies do wrong for them not to have a growth of sustainability? I'll be asking questions, the interesting questions. What is common in these top 10 richest people? I'm sure you know all these faces. If you don't know, you must know half of them, and if you don't know half of them, then you're in the wrong field of business, because these are the top billionaires of the world. Jeff Bezos, I'm sure most of you know him from Amazon, is doing wonderfully well. Bill Gates through his Microsoft. Warren Buffett's Berkshire Hathaway, he invests in phones, he invests in stocks, he invests in bank, and he's got investments in Coca-Cola also. There's Spanish SIM leaders, SIM card, the telecommunication giants. There's Carlos Slim, there's Mark Zuckerberg there, I'm sure Larry Page, Larry Ellison, and Sergey Brin. Most of them have got Google owners are also in there. Cisco owners, Mr. Larry Ellison, he's the owner of Cisco. My question is, what is common in these top 10 rich people? And if anybody comes up with this answer, I'll be really happy. It's a very simple answer, but I still again I have the answers, but I just want you guys to open your brainstorming session. You can tell me to what is common. There is one factor that's common in all of them, and I hope your brains can tell me that. Multinational enterprise, as we discussed earlier, they tend to have budget that exceeds those of small countries, to be honest. Most of the large companies are publicly traded companies. They are subject to criticism also for lacking ethical standards, and I will talk about it, why they lack ethical standards. They have also been associated with tax evasions, to be honest. Many countries like Panama, Seychelles, they have got a very low tax rate, or even in some cases they don't even have a tax rate. Big football players, they always do their tax havens there. Big CEOs, companies, they go to Panama, they go to Seychelles, and they can do all transactions via bank from those companies, the offshore banks, and they don't have to pay much taxes or income tax on their revenue. France is a fine example. They pay up to 75% tax if you're earning more than $1 million. UK is up to 45%. Afghanistan is 20% if you're earning more than $2,000 or 100,000 AFs, you are subject to tax of 20%. But most countries, France being the worst, they get, if you are earning more than $1 million, private or corporate tax, you have to pay 75% of tax to the government. So that's why the countries tend to invest more in Panama, in Seychelles, in regards to their banking only, in regards to their balance sheets. As we have used the same, we will call it MNE. Again, these are what they call references by books, and these are very famous books. The Richard E. Cav's book from 2007, page 69, that multinational is a term used by international economists and similarly defined with the multinational corporations as MNC, that controls and manages production establishment known as plant located in at least 2 countries. Fine, I mean, you have a plant in one country and operating in the country also. It makes you MNE or an MNC. The multinational enterprise will engage in foreign direct investment. We have spoken before also about FDIs. As the firm makes direct investment in host country plants for equity ownership and managerial to control or avoid some transaction costs. This seems straightforward. Let's go to the history of MNE. I mean, the first company was the East India Company, known as the Honorable East India Company, is HEIC. I mean, it was formed it was established in 1601, and it was the largest company for over 200 years. Mostly it was doing with spices at that time, transporting spices from one country to the other country. I have managed to get 2 pictures of the ship and the British Empire, of how they were doing it with India. They were doing trade with many other countries, from the Mughal India to the East Indies, and later with China. The company rose to account for half of the world's trade, particularly in basic commodities including cotton, silk, spices, tea, opium at that time. The company also ruled the beginning of the British Empire in India. How MNC works, this is repetitive again, but just to get it inside the whole empirical study of it, that it derives at least quarter of it from outside of the home country, 25%. Many international companies are based in developed countries. They create high-paying jobs and technology advanced goods in countries. Those countries don't have such opportunities, so these big companies, they provide big jobs, big technology, and it's a good opportunity to get the goods also in their own country rather than importing them from other countries. A large majority of high revenue companies are US multinational companies. I mean, it shows that these United States are quite good in setting up factory plant of transportations, of IT, of all these sectors in the countries. International companies, as mentioned earlier, they have got some ethical issues also. There are some critics towards it. Basically, if you have a multinational company like Rupert Murdoch, who owns the News of the World, Fox TV, he owns sports clubs, he is unable to politically manipulate the outcomes of many important political decisions and all those things. So it's critics, because he's so powerful, he can basically dictate what a country should be able. He's got big shares in UK company, big shares in US, so he's a complete Mughal. Yes, he's the owner of a multinational enterprise, but he's got a huge influence over politics, and that's a downside, because politicians and business always go together, and sometimes business people are in a position to influence the outcome of their decisions. In some countries, you may have known a couple of years ago, baby milk was a formula that it was supposed to help babies nourish, but the powder became so bad that it was killing babies at that time. Similar thing was a gas leak from a carbide plant in Bhopal. This happened. I mean, the company comes, invest in the food, in gas, and in essence they backfire. The gas leaks, the baby milk formula, it kills the babies and everything, and it's an obstacle, to be honest, for the, because they have paid the government large amount of cash for setup. So governments don't take much action in this regard also. I mean, the Irish Quarterly Review, they had done a study on it, volume 62 at that time, and it creates job losses in their home country. To be honest, if a factory is going from one country to the other country, it kills their own job labor market, because they are exporting job to other countries. Many believe that it has a negative effect on the economy with future job opportunities, and also lowest profit taxes. They earn, they sell in market where they can earn the highest and they can pay the less taxes. So this I will cut short my slides for this week, up to 12 slides. It has got 30 slides, and we'll continue on next week. I have asked some questions. I hope I have kept it interesting, and we'll kickstart our debate in groups of WhatsApp or on email or through voice messages. Thank you very much.